and welcome to another review by me, Tubby Engineer. Today I'll be reviewing the SX Mini M-Class. Now, as you can see, it's very similar to its standard SX Mini cousin, but this M-Class is the temperature control version. Now, if we go in for the close-ups now, we'll have a look at the device as it comes out of the box, and I will give you a quick run through of the menu. Now, when we do look at the menu, it has to be remembered that this thing has a gravity control system. So you can tip it and adjust things by tipping the device from side to side, like so. Then move on to the next one, next one, next one. Exit on. If I tip it, it selects on. Right. However, if you hold the device at an odd angle while you try to use the gravity system, it doesn't always work properly. So for purposes of demonstrating the menu system to you, I will use the up and down buttons in the close-ups. There we go. Right, okay, so we'll go in and have a look at the close-ups. Okay, so this is the SX Mini M-Class. Comes presented in this rather nice little boutique style bag. And inside that is the SX Mini box in a frosted plastic sleeve. And inside that is the box itself with the SX Mini in. Now, I had a quick look, so I've broken the seal on it. It does come with a little seal there. SX Mini on the back, colour grey and silver. Was the only colour they had in stock till mid-April, so I got this anyway. And when you open it up, you have your SX Mini and a book. So we've got the book there, and this is the actual SX Mini. Pop that to one side a moment, and there's also, it appears, a little cardboard box here. I'll open this up, but I'm presuming it's the USB charge cable, which it is. So there you go, that's the contents of the package. It's rather nicely presented, and this is a pretty good quality box. So let's put that all on one side. The USB cable is nothing particularly special, but it's a cut above your standard type of USB cable that you get supplied with these. Well moulded plastics, decent looking construction. Let's pop that on one side. Oops, dropping things. Let's put the SX there. Right, so in the little envelope you get a warranty card. Put that one side. And a little booklet here that says information for you. Lots of little pictures. A QR barcode to scan. And on the back specifications and features, reference diagram, how to operate, precautions. Okay, so that all looks in place, so let's have a quick look round this SX Mini. And we'll need a coin for a moment. Right, so this is the actual SX Mini itself. Let me just move this light around a bit. It's possibly a bit bright. Yep, so this is the SX Mini itself. Grey and silver. Now, I know in the photos that you see on the internet the pin is a screw adjustable, but this is most definitely sprung, and it's quite a decent spring. 4 engraved slots in the top for airflow with smaller atties. Switch on the side, up and down buttons, USB socket. Okay, so on the bottom here you can see the engraving. SX Mini M-Class powered by Yeehee SX350J. Battery cap. Couple of Torx screws holding the bottom on, one at the top. The whole device feels really... It's actually quite a heavy little beast, is this. I mean, there's going to be 2 ways you can hold it. The standard way is going to be like that. You know, sort of and trigger with your thumb, or you can hold it that way and trigger with your finger. That's actually quite comfortable, surprisingly. Now, let me tighten this battery cover up a touch. I'm just tightening the battery cover up. I will do you know, there's no rattle at all from any of these buttons. The up and down buttons feel nice and clicky. They are quite stiff, but not too much so. You'd certainly know you'd pressed them, and won't press them accidentally just by catching them like you can do sometimes with the Vapor Sharks. The fire button, again, nice positive action to it. Doesn't feel sharp on the edges or anything. In fact, there's no edges at all on this that could be considered sharp. It really is a quality piece. It feels like a quality piece of kit, at least from the outside. I have my doubts about this printing here. I'm fairly sure that will wear off quite quickly, but that's nothing to worry about. Just as a size comparison, this here in the red skin is a Vapor Shark RDNA 30. As you can see, the SX Mini is a little taller. Pretty much the same height. and pretty much the same depth, so similar footprints between the two, you know, size for size, no great shakes. Right, okay. Okay, so I'm going to run quickly through the menu system on the SX Mini M Class. Now, first of all, this is turned off, so to turn it on, 5 clicks as usual. SX Mini, SX350, and then the screen goes dark, which I kind of find a bit odd, but if you touch the fire button it comes to life straight away, so no great shakes. Now there's a lock mode on this, and that's 3 quick presses, so, and it displays the lock symbol, 3 again, unlocked. Now to access the settings menu, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it comes up into the settings screen. Now the first setting that shows up is the adjustment for the power setting. Now if you've got it in temperature control mode it will show joules, if you've got it in power mode it will show watts. Now there are some slight oddities with the power settings. You only get 50 joules but you get 60 watts. Don't know why. You'd have to ask Yi about that. I haven't been able to get in touch with them yet. So into the settings mode, you can use the up or down buttons. You can also use the gravity sensor. Now the problem being that the gravity sensor can be a bit twitchy if you don't keep the thing upright enough. It does work, but if you have the mod twisted and try to do it, it doesn't seem to. You have to keep it pretty much upright and twist, which is a bit difficult, so I will do it using the buttons for now, and I'll show you the gravity sensor system working in the wide shots. Okay, so once you're at temperature adjust, pressing the fire button again will move you on to the next item in the menu, which is the temperature setting. Next one is temperature units, and you can switch between Fahrenheit or centigrade. I prefer it in Fahrenheit because I've got used to it. Then there's exit. Pressing either the up or down button now will bring you out of the menu. Press the fire button again, system on. Selecting either button will turn the system off. Then there's link off. Pressing the button will set it to on, use that when you're updating firmware. Display left. This one's a bit pointless, personally, because when you use it with the gravity sensor, the display will flip over. There is apparently an auto setting. Move on to the next one. Power and joule. That will allow you to switch between power mode and joule mode. Now, since I've got a nickel build in it, it will have to run in joule mode. Move on to the next one. Power and joule, and back to the power setting. So that's the basics of the menu. If you leave it a few seconds, as you've noticed, it will jump out of the menu mode. and when you try and bring it back it'll be in the normal display. Mildly annoying when you're trying to do this, but no problem when you're actually using it. Right, well, that's it for the menus, so we'll go back and I'll talk you through all the other things. Right, so now I've explained the basic menu system, I'll explain the display and the memory settings that it has. Now, if you look here on the display, you can see it says 20J. That is the setting in joules, because I've got the thing in temperature protection mode at the minute. Just below it here is a counter. Now that shows the total of number of joules supplied from one battery change to the next. Basically that will mean, well, it'll basically be a counter of how much energy you've put through the coil per battery. Next to that you can see it says M2 and standard. What that is that this device has a set of memories. Now, as you can see, I've got M1 is 15, M2 is 20, M3 is 30, M4 is 40 and M5 is 50. Next to it, it says M5 and standard. To access the various memories, you press the up button from the display screen. Press the fire button and lock it in. To change the setting next to it where it says standard, press the down button. You'll see it switches to powerful, then powerful plus, soft and standard. Now, as I understand it from looking at the Yihi website, the soft setting will set out below your set power and ramp up towards it. The demonstration they show on their website is with it set at 40 watts. In soft mode it will fire at 30 and ramp up to 40, and set in standard mode it will run straight along at the set power. Powerful mode will set off, the example they give is at 40. If you fire it in powerful mode it will start at 50 and ramp down to the set power level, and the powerful plus does the same thing but for a bit longer. You can also set the power level without changing the menus, without changing the memory settings. That's done there in the main display, in the main menu screen. However, just exit. If you want to change one of the menus, select the appropriate, if you want to change one of the memories, select the appropriate memory. We'll start off with M1. Once you've selected that, press the down button and it will show adjust and move down one. You can then set the appropriate one, press fire and that will lock it in. So now M1 is at 14 and all the others remain unchanged. So let's put in memory 1 again. We'll go into the menu and here we'll change that back up to 15 again. Set it and exit. Now you'll see it says 15 M1 standard. This is something that's slightly confusing, because if I press that button there, M1 comes up as 14, and when I press it, it has actually stored M1. The M1 has stayed unaffected. It's a minor bug. What should happen really is that M1 display should disappear if you change the setting from the main adjust menu. So that's the memory settings, and just above that we've got all the usual information: voltage that's being fired at, coil resistance, and temperature. When you press it, it will show you the temperature. You'll also note the battery indicator bounces up and down. It's showing you the battery sag, which is great. If I swap this through into M5 mode and fire it at 50 joules, you'll see the battery sag is much more pronounced because it's firing at a higher temperature, at higher power levels. So that's the display and the menus run through. And I think that covers pretty much all of the operation. Yes, we've done all of this. Oh, I haven't showed you how it's turned off. Right, well, system on. If I select a button there, it will say system off, bye bye, and shut down. When you turn it on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, SX Mini, SX Mini 350, and then the display goes blank. Press it and it fires up. There we go. That covers display and the memory settings and the standard settings. We've done joules. The power mode setting, I will show you that as well. Here it says power and joule. That's a bit of a spelling mistake, but they should be able to redo that next firmware. So switch to power, press OK, and you'll notice it hasn't kept the same power setting I had. It's gone to the last wattage setting I had, which was 20 watts. Now you'll see the display's changed slightly in that it's now got, down here in the corner, the voltage that is in the battery. You've still got the joule counter, and you've still got the standard mode, but when you select the memories now, there will be memories in the power mode and they will be in watts. They are distinctly separate from the temperature setting modes. Right, so I shall pop this back into joule mode because I've got a nickel coil on it and I would like to fire it in temperature control mode. So back to joule, OK. And you can see again it's kept the joule setting and it is distinct from the power setting, which was 20 watts. Get it on, so if I select one of these, that's it. Right, that should be everything covered now in the menu system. So we'll go back to the wide shots and I will talk a bit more about what I think of it. Right, so that's the close-up to the device and the menu system. Now, using the device I found really quite delightful. It's been a really nice device to use. There's no rattles, the buttons don't rattle, they are nice and positive, you know, they don't click too easily so that you accidentally adjust things, but they're easy to find, and they do have a solid, you know, they do have a solid press. They've also sorted out the frame so the corners aren't sharp anymore, they've just beveled the corners slightly. The fire button is still, I wouldn't say it was sharp, but it has a very square edge and you can feel that. It might perhaps be a little better, just a touch more rounded on the edges, but that is a very minor thing. Sometimes I find it, I don't say annoying, sometimes I just find it a tiny bit less comfortable than it should be, I think is the best way to describe it. I can't honestly say it's a problem. I've not had the fire button miss at any point. You know, no matter where I've pressed it, it's always worked perfectly. Same with the adjustment buttons. Now, one of the things they do say with this is that you shouldn't use this USB connector for charging or for pass-through, mostly because they reckon that repeated use could work the, you know, if you're not careful you could work the USB connector loose and then you wouldn't be able to use the USB connector for upgrading. You have, however, got the screw cap on the bottom for removing the battery, so it's not a great problem. It really, USB charging on this would be terribly slow anyway because it only uses the standard 450 milliamp, which might be fine on something like an Ego, but since I've got 2500 milliamp hour batteries in here, it takes 5 hours to charge them or thereabouts using the USB. I can charge them in an hour and a half on an hour and a half, 2 hours on a standard charger. So I'd rather bung the batteries in a standard charger, plus I can charge 4 at a time on my 4-bay charger. Plenty of backup left over. So what do I think of the device to actually use? I've had no problems whatsoever. The only thing I do have a problem with is this setting in joules thing for the temperature control mode. Now, we had a big long debate over the last couple of days on the Planet of the Vapes forum as to what exactly this joule setting means. Now, I know there are specific definitions of joules, but as far as I can tell, all the specific definitions of joules apply to over a time period, not to a point setting. Or what I think it is, the joule setting is roughly analogous to the watts setting in temperature mode on a DNA 40. That's what I think. That's how I'm using it. You know, so I've got it set at 20 joules, which I'm taking to be about a 20 watt setting. And it certainly feels like that to me. It feels like I'm vaping at the 20 watt setting in temperature control mode on a DNA 40. I've had no problems with this scrambling the display, no weird temperature readings, no odd jumps, nothing like that. It all seems to have been really very reliable. Is it better than a DNA 40? That's a difficult one. I'd certainly say that the temperature control mode, the temperature protection mode, is a match for the DNA 40. It certainly seems to be as effective and as reliable as the DNA 40. The other features, that gravity sensor and the auto flip over on the screen so that you don't have to keep changing orientation if you're left or right handed, that's also an excellent feature, something that Evolve don't have. The dual setting, well, that's their own little twist on it. I've heard people say that it could be because Evolve have patented what's in the temperature control, in the temperature protection system. I don't know. Yeehee have decided to use joules as their setting. Now, one of the things they have put on is, if we look just below the joules setting there, we bring it a bit closer so you can read it, there is a counter. And that counter counts up the number of joules you've used. Now, that number of joules you've used, if the atomizer is cold and you're drawing on it, it will be 20 joules over 1 second if you've got it set for 20 joules. But once the temperature protection starts to kick in, it will drop down from using 20 joules a second to whatever rate it feels like, depending on your temperature setting. So it does give you a reasonable track of how much energy you've used through the device. Whether that can be translated to anything useful in the real world is a different matter. So, I know what you want to hear. You want to hear, should you buy one? Where can you buy one? What do I do with it when I get it? Personally, if you can afford one of these, because they aren't cheap, I paid £169 from my e-pack for this one. You can apparently get them from other places cheaper. It all depends on where you live as well, because of taxes, various other things, import duties, blah blah blah. So it's possibly not as cheap as a Vapor Shop. It's certainly not as cheap as some of the other DNA 40 mods that are out there. I do think it's worth it. I do think it's worth it. It feels well built. It's a good solid piece. It's actually quite heavy, but it's a good solid piece. It doesn't feel like it's going to fall apart in a couple of weeks. Should you buy one? Even if you're not in the market for a temperature controlled device, I would say yes. Because it's a 60 watt mod as it stands now. There is apparently an extension tube that will screw in below the battery for another 18650 battery. So you'll be able to use it up to 120 watts. Now, I rather think having a extension tube poking out of the bottom will ruin the look of the thing, but you know, if you want to vape at 120 watts, that's what you'll have to do. However, with an extension tube, you've got the choice of vaping at up to 60 watts straight out your pocket, or with the extension tube 120 watts. So you have got quite a flexible device. You've also got the temperature control mode, which is, as far as I can tell, reliable. I've not had any problems with it. You've got a good solid 510 connector. It doesn't feel like it's going to come loose. It's made of solid 510 stainless steel, stainless steel. So, you know, it's not going to wear, you know, the threads aren't going to wear out easily. Unlike some of the brass ones, you know, it's not going to strip threads. And like the ones that are push fitted into the tops of mods, it's not going to work loose if you catch it or whatever. So yeah, yes, I personally think it's probably one of the best mods available at the minute. Well, I think that's it for this one. If you need to learn more about the SX Mini M Class, I'd recommend going to the Yeehee website. They've also got a frequently asked questions section, which does explain their thinking behind the joules setting. I won't quote it here. If you're that interested, please go and find out. I gave up on it. It was making my head ache. The whole debate was going on till 3 in the morning, and my head was spinning, and I've decided 20 joules is roughly equivalent to 20 watts on a DNA 40, and I'm going to stick with using, you know, with that equivalence for the joules settings. Right, well, enough rambling from me. I've been Tubby Engineer, and thank you very much for watching. Bye now.